And but nowadays that has all changed. I mean, well, another thing too, they didn't have the preventatives that they have now. I mean, the pill and all this was long before the pill, long before anything like that. And so it was an entirely different era. And although we liked to talk about it as kids, we did more talking than we did acting.
Yeah. But you know, I doubt that's changed much either.
And that's possible. That's possible.
Because, you know, that's how it was when I went to high school.
Well,
guys talked and talked and
Yeah,
talked,
I know.
and I'm sure half of it wasn't true.
That's right. That's right. They dream it up. Figment of their imagination. So,
But I don't. You say I'm going to try and play devil's advocate again, because in a lot of ways I don't think. I mean, as you talk about things, I don't think they've necessarily changed. I mean, I know in the city and things like that, but even in small town Americana right now, things are still that way. Erica, my little sister, just had a friend that got pregnant and went away to have her child, and just came back.
How old was she?
Erica's age, 16, 17.
16? Yeah. Yeah.
And granted, it's a small town, and so that's why it's still the way it was when you were there. But small town kids' attitudes and perceptions and things like that aren't different from kids in cities necessarily. I mean, granted, the situation that she got herself into wouldn't have, you know, I mean, in the city, things wouldn't, you know, they probably wouldn't do that necessarily. Do you know what I mean?
I know.
But at the
what you
same
mean,
time,
yeah.
the attitudes and things like that don't change. And that was one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because I think it's the same nowadays, where kids will experiment with it and they get disappointed and maybe just have a couple of experiences before they go to college, let's say. And then in college, maybe things are totally different. And I think that it seems to me like that probably was the norm then too. I mean, hadn't most kids at least experimented with it a couple times in high school before they were 17, 18?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think on average that's about it. You know, there's a lot of kids that were virgins until they were married, but they were in the minority. I mean, a lot of them, but nevertheless, most kids experiment maybe once, and that's about it. And but there were a lot of them that didn't. But anyhow, when you say it was similar with you as with me, I think you're right. But I think the biggest reason it is because you came from a small town.
Yeah.
I think right today there is a vast difference in the raising of a child in a small town such as you came from, Show Low, and a town such as Phoenix. I don't know why. I think the moral attitudes of parents are about the same in both cases, except that in the city, is it a tendency to be a little more lenient on things like that, or is the what am I trying to say? Are the bars down more in a big city than they are in a small town? I don't know, but I can see, knowing you from a baby, and growing up there in Show Low, I can see, yes, that there's a tremendous difference, or a similarity between you and me that I wouldn't expect and probably wouldn't find in someone had you been born and raised here. Right. I think your attitude on a lot of things would have been different.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, I guess just what I'm still talking about is just as much as we perceive things to be different from back then, and in a lot of ways they are, but just on a general, like the general attitude of kids that age, I guess is what I'm saying. Is probably hasn't really changed as much as we think they probably have.
Well, it's certainly a wide open. Everything of a sexual nature now is wide open. I mean, the stuff they talk about on, even in commercials.
Right.
I mean, they talk about vaginal jellies, for example, and things like this. And I can't even say some of the things that are on TV in front of this camera, because I'm ashamed that we've gotten to that state. But nevertheless, it's horrible. And but I guess I'm going to have to live with it. But I don't think it's going to change. But if one little thing like vaginal jelly would have been on radio back in those days, they didn't have TV or anything, my gosh, it'd been a headline story in the entire United States. And they'd probably taken them off the air. So things in that matter have sure changed.
Yeah. And the reason I go through all of this is because I did want to, I guess, leading into your band years, talk about the 20s.
Well, the band years...
but outside of, I mean, I know we've talked a lot about your teenage years and things like that, but historical perspective time, I wanted to talk about the 20s.
Well, the 20s, most of the 20s were before I got into the band. Actually,
Right.
I started in the band when
That's
I was
why I wanted to talk about
29.
it before we get into the band.
Talk about the 20s before we get into the
Right.
band. Well, we've covered a lot of the 20s already, it seems to me.
Yeah.
I don't know what aspect of the 20s.
Well,
we've
for one
missed.
thing, Prohibition. We haven't talked about
Well, that-
Prohibition, and
all right,
I
okay.
I know you have a couple stories.
I have some stories. Yeah.
and that was mostly in the 20s.
Yeah.